Blog Talk Radio.
Yo, it's me, the grill. Why don't you put down that garden hose and get over here? We got some grilling to do. So scrape my grate and lay it on me. Spicy Korean pork chops, grilled pork burritos, and double smoky ribs with bacon, bourbon, barbecue sauce. Woo-wee! I'm getting up to $3.50 real fast. So come on, let's grill for it. Want to grill for it this summer? Get started at porkbeinspired.com. This message funded by America's pork producers and the Pork Checkoff.
Blog Talk Radio.
Franchise interviews. From Easton, Pennsylvania to Sydney, Australia. You're listening to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews. Welcome to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews has been giving an up-close, behind-the-scenes look at franchising and entrepreneurship. Listen to interviews with franchisers, franchisees, franchise authors, franchise experts, and attorneys. And now, welcome your host, Marty McDermott, and Franchise Interviews.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of Franchise Interviews, where for over 9 years we've been asking the Franchpreneurs one-on-one. I'm your host, Marty McDermott. I'm the president of Franchise Interviews, and we have a great show today. We're meeting with Jerry Hancock, the founder of Sub-Zero Ice Cream. And Sub-Zero Ice Cream uses negative 321-degree liquid nitrogen to freeze and hand-mix each customized order with a unique patented process. I'm going to talk to Jerry about that in just a moment on Franchise Interviews. So stick around because we have a great show.
The Stone Coat Franchise Opportunity. Are you looking for a unique and lucrative franchise opportunity? If so, take a look at Stone Coat. With a patented process which creates a true stone finish on almost any wall or ceiling, Stone Coat is a true game-changing product in the multi-billion-dollar construction industry. Stone Coat is applied faster, cleaner, and cheaper than conventional quarried stone, which saves both time and money. With advantages in remodel and new construction of both residential and commercial projects, Stone Coat is a true crossover product. The Stone Coat franchise opportunity provides a low startup cost, low operating expenses, comprehensive training, ongoing support, and no royalty payments. For more information on the Stone Coat franchise opportunity, go to www.stonecoatfranchise.com. That's www.stonecoatfranchise.com, or call us at 972-380-2700. That's 972-380-2700.
Franchise Teacher. Would you like to know how to franchise your concept or grow your franchise business?
Meet the experts at Franchise Teacher.
The goal of Franchise Teacher is to teach, coach, consult, and advise. The team of experts at Franchise Teacher will evaluate your business model and present you with a winning business strategy.
Franchise Teacher will help you decide whether or not your concept works and if it's franchisable. Franchise Teacher is proud to have over 30 years of experience in franchising as both franchisees and franchisors.
Franchise Teacher are developers of over a dozen franchise systems, which include brick and mortar as well as home-based concepts of nearly 3,000 combined franchise locations.
Whether you need to add more units or get more customers, Franchise Teacher can help. We will teach.
Franchise Teacher will help you learn our proven system.
Coach.
Franchise Teacher will help you provide a game plan to succeed.
Consult.
Franchise Teacher will make sure you stay on track.
And advise.
Franchise Teacher will help you learn from our over 30 years of experience in franchising as both franchisees and franchisors. Take advantage of our free, no-obligation phone consultation. Simply go to franchiseteacher.com or call us at 561-385-5555. 561-385-3032.
That's franchiseteacher.com, or call us at 561-385-3032.
Hi, this is Connie McDermott, Administrative Assistant for Franchise Interviews, LLC, and you are listening to Franchise Interviews.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to a very special edition of Franchise Interviews, where for over 9 years we've been asking the entrepreneurs one-on-one. I'm your host, Marty McDermott. I'm the president of Franchise Interviews, and as we were saying earlier, we have a great show today. We're meeting with Jerry Hancock, the founder of Sub-Zero Ice Cream. And Sub-Zero Ice Cream uses negative 321-degree liquid nitrogen to freeze and hand-mix each customized order with a unique patented process. Hi, Jerry. How you doing? Welcome to the show. Beginning, but it's great to have you on the show. You know, I first learned about you, and I want to talk to you, about the Shark Tank experience. One of my favorite shows is Shark Tank, and when I saw the whole concept, I said, "Wow, this is great." So, to have the chance to speak to you today it's just a pleasure. So, thanks for coming on the show. We always like to ask our guests, where are you calling from today?
I'm calling from Provo, Utah.
Oh, fantastic! How's the weather there today, Jerry?
It's hot. It's about 100 degrees today. So, but it's a dry heat. So I bet.
Right. Of course. Yeah, that's fantastic. So, how did you get this whole, franchise started, Jerry? I mean, I know there's an interesting story behind the concept.
Well, we had a burrito concept that we bought, and we just, my degree's in chemistry, and so I was working in software engineering, so that makes sense. But just wanted to, diversify my experience, and so I bought something I thought I could understand. That's just a food concept, and of course we bought in and built a poor location, anyway, to make a long story short, we needed to add some revenue, so we just started asking customers what they wanted. So they said, everybody said ice cream, and I said, all right, great. So I started researching ice cream. Basically, came up with the fact that the manufacturers suggested don't do ice cream if you're already in a struggling location, and they gave one caveat. They said unless it's different. And so people come away from the brand to try the different. And so we asked people what they liked, and everybody said customization. So the definition of the product then became don't freeze it till you order it.
Wow.
And so that's fantastic. How it started the process.
Right. It's fantastic. It is. It's a great story. I mean, how and that's been one of the themes of our show, Jerry. We're slowly approaching our 500th show, 10 years of doing the podcast, and it's one of the things that attracted me to your franchise and your concept, is I thought it was an interesting story, when I first learned about you. For anyone who's unfamiliar with Sub-Zero, I mean, how do you then typically describe the concept? We give a very brief introduction in the beginning of the show, but how do you typically describe it to someone?
Sure. So if you think about an ice cream shop, and early on, we had people coming into the burrito shop, and they said, "When are you going to open up your ice cream shop?" And I was like, "Well, we're open. What are you talking about?" And they said, "Where's the freezers?" So the first thing you have to understand is that there's no freezers. So an ice cream shop with no freezers, that's kind of different. So it's
right.
So we started asking, or we started with let's take it right back to basics. So in doing that, it's morphed into more options for customers. And so, but anyway, let's go back to what it is. So the custom-made to order ice cream. So somebody wants it customized, it's custom-made to order. So it's one step back from what you're used to, from just adding a topping. So so somebody walks in, and our original vendor had a premium ice cream mix. They had a low fat, they had a custard, they had a yogurt. And so people would walk in, they'd say, all right, do you want a premium custard, low fat, or yogurt? And then we'd add the flavors. So if you wanted a cheesecake, pineapple cheesecake, then you add those two flavors in, and then we can either add a mix in before or after, depending on whether you want it throughout or on top. And then and then we freeze it. It takes about 15 seconds to freeze, and then we scoop it. And so it's a completely custom-made ice cream. Now, one other thing that's different about it too is that most people don't realize that ice cream's half air. Most ice cream has what they call overrun in the industry, and they overrun. What that means is that as it's freezing, they're whipping it with air. Our ice cream doesn't have any overrun. So it's what they call a super premium ice cream where there's just no extra air.
It's so clever, when I saw the whole concept. But what's been some of your favorite flavors? I mean, over time, Jerry. I mean, has it been one particular flavor, two particular flavors that have stood out for you? Anything you personally like?
It's amazing to me that I still find flavors that I find, as new flavors all the time that we put together, because we have 40 flavors in house, and you can mix and match those flavors. So instead of just a chocolate, you got chocolate amaretto, and I really like amaretto, but I like it with something else like chocolate amaretto or a mint amaretto. And so mint amaretto is the two I tend to gravitate to, or mint amaretto or a coconut blackberry with raspberry.
Wow.
And
you can
I
pretty
like
much
that.
get something different every time you go in.
Yeah, every time, exactly. It's you could spend your entire life, with 10 ice creams a day and never exhaust the option.
That's true. That's fantastic. What was the? I have to ask you. I mean, because I am such a fan of the show, so I feel like I'm talking to a celebrity. I mean, what was the Shark Tank experience like for you, Jerry, for you and your wife?
It was, I do a lot of public speaking. I like to do that, and we do, but usually it's usually on science, and because we take we've tried to create a curriculum where we use the liquid nitrogen to promote education. At any rate, the point of the matter is that it's a little bit different, obviously, than anything else, because with their format, there's one thing that when you walk in, the only thing that's scripted is that first couple of minutes. Right. I'm terrible at scripts. I'm just awful at scripts. So I kind of botched the script, for the most part. But they
that was the part with
the
nitrogen, Jerry. Was that the part with the nitrogen? I think where you forgot to spray the nitrogen, if I remember correctly.
That. Yep.
It was actually clever.
I
think it really added to the segment though, because it made it more natural.
It made it feel like we were human, I think, and that was the good thing. And now one thing that, I'm a pretty flat personality as far as, I don't inflect a lot. Mm-hmm. And so the producers kept on saying, when we would go through our practice, and the only thing they care about, the producers don't do anything but coach you on that part. So they don't do anything anything other than that. So they just kept on saying, you need more energy, You probably see the people that come in and they got the, hey, I'm crazy Eddie,
Exactly.
And they and it's not so anyway, so I didn't want to do that, obviously.
Yeah.
And but anyway, I'm trying to pump it up, and I'm not used to like energy shots. So I took two right before we walked in, and then you walk down that gangplank, and then you hit your mark, and then they go stop. And I forgot about this. They told you this, but they don't really explain it to you. They do camera check. So for the next
I gotcha.
And I'm like, oh my heck! I mean, that 30 seconds felt like 2 hours. Just because Mr. Wonderful's going with his fingers, back and forth, and then and I started getting dizzy, and then they don't say 1, 2, 3, go, or snap the little thing, and they just say go, and that's it. So then I'm like,
wow.
Okay, I'm in a daze right now. So we got, after that kind of mix up actually did, like, you're right, it did loosen it up. It made it feel, or we made a goof. We made it more real, and not so business. And I think that was a good thing. But it was a great experience. I still have to kind of pinch myself that we actually got on, but I kind of I just knew we were going to get on when I applied. I just had this kind of just
this feeling,
and I part of it's because I know we've got a great show. Even before we knew we had great ice cream, I knew we had a good show.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought you did a great job, on the show. It made an impression, and I could understand why, Shark Tank would be interested, in your type of concept, So I mean, it made a lot of sense, So how has it changed things? I mean, for the business, Jerry. I mean, I imagine the show has some type of impact. I mean, that's how I also learned about you as well. So when I saw I had the opportunity to interview you, of course I jumped at it. Has it changed things a bit?
It has. It's been an incredible advocate, I guess, as far as the brand. And now, the interesting thing about Shark Tank, you'd think they'd have contact with you after the show. I haven't heard from the show, in probably since really, other than somebody sending an email, can you send us an update? And we never hear anything left, other than that.
Right.
They leave you, hanging, completely. So you're on your own after the show. And we didn't get a deal, and which, that's probably a good thing, but it makes it's a different struggle, because if you think about people that get a deal, at least they have some money if it actually went through, because they don't always go through. If they those that get a deal at least have some money, to do something, to prepare.
Sure.
Where when we went on, we didn't have any money to go out and prepare. So in other words, we I remember talking to one of the other Shark Tank people that have been on before, and he spent thousands of dollars just updating his website so that it could handle the traffic, and it still crashed. And I was like, well, I don't have thousands of dollars. I've got hundreds of dollars. And so we're just well, the website's going to crash. I mean, oh well. And and it did. And it was, the funny thing is that when I had that same guy watching the web traffic, and and we and he says, when we were on and our website crashed, he says, we got all this social media saying, what a bunch of schmucks. Their website crashed. And he says, when you guys went on, he says, people were saying, all right, good for them. They've made it. We've crashed their website. It was all positive, and it was like, I was almost shocked that we got that kind of response. Which I'm glad for, but it was just different. Because you just had this, we seem to be likable enough that people, they wanted to root for you.
Of course, absolutely. Yeah, it would be interesting if they did follow-ups, Jerry. You know what I mean? Because you're right. I'm always curious sometimes, what happens, after, a guest comes on the show. You do wonder sometimes whatever happened to that guest or whatever happened to, another guest, and I think that would be an interesting part of the show sometimes, is to kind of go back sometimes and, find out what happened.
Yeah, and it's, I love the Beyond the Shark Tank, but they typically tend to focus on people that actually got a deal. And so it's very,
the ones that got a deal.
Focused on. And we went in there having a pretty good idea we weren't going to get a deal. And that sounds pessimistic, but it's really not. It's that if you study, and anybody going on the show, you're going to study what each person's character is like. And
of course.
Because you're making a lifelong decision, and but also you want to pitch it. Everything's about audience. So anyway, the only people that had done a food concept is Barbara, and as far as a brick and mortar, some of them had done shipping, stuff to be shipped, like Damon, but it was always mail order. It was a web, type play.
Right.
And but brick and mortar, and they really don't like franchises for some reason. There's I've actually heard interviews where they just flat out say they don't like franchises. So
I've seen that too.
So the only one that was going to do anything was Barbara. Barbara wasn't there. She might bring on, Mark Cuban, but he won't go on his own. On that
see.
type of deal. So we just went in like, all right, you know what? We'll give the best pitch, but we can't we talk. Some people they would have come back and said, hey, what about 40%? Or they would, if you're desperate, and we were, but when you're not going to get a deal, you might as well leave, the highest thing on the table.
Of course,
and then take your lumps, and then somebody else comes along, then at least you got a good show. And,
exactly.
But anyway, that's kind of when we went in. We just knew that it was that was the the case. So that's here nor there, and but no matter what, it's like one of we had two producers, and one producer kept on coming in and says you focused on really getting a deal, and she really focused it. You got to get a deal, and part of it is the last 3 or 4 days they'd had a lot of loser products on there, and the producers were getting frustrated with the staff because they were getting these loser pitches, and so they were like, we need more deals, and I'm like, listen, we've got a great product. They don't want it. There's nothing I can do. And,
of course.
They and then the other producer closed the door and he says, you know what? If you get a deal, great. He says, but more importantly, get aired, because not everybody that tapes gets aired. And
yes, I've heard that. Yeah.
So he said, focus on your presentation and making sure you present well, because if you don't present well, if you don't make good TV, then you don't get on the air. So we had people that were on just before us that we knew. Well, they got a deal, but they never got aired.
Oh boy!
And their deal fell through. So it's like, well, so you got to focus on the task at hand first. It's like through that process, who makes the decision of who gets taped? The casting director. So your audience is the casting director, not the sharks. So don't present to the sharks when you're going to the casting director. So then you move to another step. Each one of those steps in that process is a different audience.
I gotcha. That makes sense.
And so you play a role like when you go into the tank. Like I gotta be good TV and try and get a deal. And they're not always the same thing.
That's true. I use this show for I teach marketing at Kaplan University, Jerry, and a lot of times what I'll do is I'll use the clip, like in the beginning, as you said, the introduction where you're making the pitch, like we call it the elevator pitch, or sometimes we call it a unique marketing proposition, and I think I've probably even used yours in the past as well, for my classes, and I think it's a great learning experience, I find, for my business students. I don't require them to watch it, but a lot of them do, and they learn a lot, by watching the show, and again, it's one of the reasons, it's when I heard about, I had this opportunity to interview, I said, oh, I know him, I've never spoken to you, but TV does that, doesn't it? It feels like
it does.
Know the person, and again, you and I have never actually spoken before, but I felt like I knew you before, this interview, which is fantastic. At what point in the business, Jerry, did you decide to franchise? I mean, would you have known initially, when you started the concept, it was going to be a franchise, or how did you know, that it seems like franchising is a very good fit.
Intent. That's I knew that it was either sell out very, very early to very big money, or franchise. And so, and it was such an unproven concept or idea when we started that, and it really took a lot longer than even I expected to test out. So there was quite a few problems when we started. Now, what I mean by that is like we started out with this idea, but the thing we found is that when we there were either getting the consistency right, getting the process right, and getting and that's changed many, many, many times over the years. But but then also flavoring. I really didn't anticipate that flavoring was going to be as big of a problem as it was. Now, think about like most ice cream shops when they make or even a yogurt shop. They're doing a minimum of 5 gallons per batch, and they're flavoring that. So the flavors come pretty concentrated. So now we're doing 4 ounces, and 4 ounces is a very different ratio than So getting the flavor right was very difficult, and getting them dispensed and accurately, made. And then as we diluted them, so then you work on a dilution factor, and you think, okay, that'll work. But you forget that then they start to ferment. When things are concentrated, they're preserved by the fact that they're concentrated. That's why people concentrate them. So they then you go for then we had to go and figure out how to make it preserved so that it would last longer in that non-concentrated format.
Wow. What do you look for in your franchisees, Jerry? I mean, you look for any particular types of characteristics or skills to get into the franchise? As I said, when I studied your model, it seemed like, franchising was a really good fit, as far as distributing the product. But, I mean, what characteristics or traits do you look for?
And like I mentioned, there's two, getting money is a good option, but those people aren't really focused on money. People are more focused on getting a return, and so the long term isn't in their sights. They're looking short term. So anyway, back to the franchisee. A franchisee is looking more long term. So for one, and the other thing is that I look for is it's kind of it's a character thing, and I always tell the prospect, that's looking into franchising, a story about when I was with this other brand. It was called New York Burrito, and I was buying some equipment from one of the stores that was closing, and I asked the guy, I said, well, you spent $100,000 on your build out. He says, why are you closing? He says, it's just getting in the way of my fishing. And I just remember that, and it just shocked me. I'm like, it's getting in the way of your fishing?
Right.
Yeah. He says, I'm a fireman. I get 3 days off a week, 4 days off a week. He says, I'm not fishing anymore, and I really want to fish. And I was like, okay, whatever. If that's so I tell people, like, the main thing I'm looking for is I'm saying, listen, if you think this is going to consume or isn't going to consume your life, then don't do this, because owning a business consumes you.
It does,
and it has to consume you.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that's and just if it's gonna get in the way of your fishing, then don't do it.
Right. I think a lot of people don't realize that, Jerry. When they get into franchising, I think sometimes they just think, the franchise is just going to run on automatic pilot. We've heard that, a lot, over the last decade. And, from experience of talking to people like yourself, that's not the way it works, is it?
Right. Yeah, it's you got to be in front of the, I look at our most successful franchisees. They're the ones that are the best at treating it like a small business, and they just go out and pound the pavement. They're involved in their local community. They've been involved in the community prior to, so they know the people in their area. They get supported because people know them. They like them, and it's not because they're rich and they're adding to another. It's just another business. It's because they're real people and they're open and involved. I find the biggest marketing benefit, or if you want to call it that, marketing tool is talking, and that's just it, and it's just simply talking. even if it's on social media, when I'm learning as time goes on, I've been looking for the silver bullet in social media. You know what works?
Right.
I did a video last night. It was 30 seconds with my dad, a live video, and it was just on my personal page. It wasn't on the Sub-Zero page. And he's been like, well, my dad's asked me, like, he's 75 years old. He's asking me, what can I do? He's an architect, got a lot of experiences. And we were just talking about old buildings. And I just made a comment about, for the love of old buildings, and that we're just sitting here talking about that. And by the time I got home from his house, less than an hour away, we had 60 people that were watching it. And by later that night, there's 130 people. Now this isn't like on a corporate page or we posted it or boosted it.
Right.
It starts with just talking. And
that's what social media is, isn't it? I think, a lot of people, misinterpret. I think, it's a great lesson. I teach social media marketing as well, Jerry, and I love that example. I'd like to even share that with my students, because, that's the learning lesson. I think a lot of people have this misperception of what social media is. I think a lot of people think it's just selling a product sometimes, or just coming out and just, talking about your product. But it's like you said, it's talking, isn't it? I mean, it's as simple as that. And that's why it's so effective, isn't it?
I don't know if you follow Gary Vee. Have you heard of Gary Vee?
I know the name, yes.
Anyway, he's written some books and stuff, and I've been watching him. And one thing I watched some of his older videos they did, and it was with this wine company that he sold off. And oftentimes it's just like, he's just a hype guy, Well, how he became the hype guy is because he was selling wine, and the reason his wine business took off was because he sat down each day, and he brought out a different wine and just talked about it. And that was it.
That's
great,
and
it dawned on me that we're always so afraid of criticism.
Yeah.
For so many years, I was afraid to say we make the best ice cream in the world. Okay, and then it wasn't until I got validated when we were at a fair and people were running around to the major brands and they were just going and they started taste testing. And I was like, I should just tally. And it was 10 out of 10 people that didn't know which one was which were picking our product.
Uh-huh.
And I was like,
wow.
Holy crap, we've got a good product.
Yeah, exactly.
So
exactly.
But you're always so afraid that I got to back it up. Okay.
Right, with something.
Just back it up. And it's so I think we got to get past the fear and just talk.
Mhm. It's true. I think you're right. There's a lot of trepidation, isn't there? In as you said, getting past the whole fear. I was on a podcast a month ago on entrepreneurship, Jerry. And I was telling the story how I had that fear, when I was presented with the opportunity to do this podcast. We're slowly approaching our 500th show and 10th year of doing it, and I was terrified to do the first show, and now, it just seems so natural, and since we've been doing the show, we've had over 500,000 people listen to the podcast, and it's really incredible, and it's like you said, it's really as simple as just talking about something that you're interested in or passionate about, and that's what people want to hear. They don't want to hear ads or promotions, right? They just want to hear someone talk about something of quality, that has content. I think we're, as a country, we're tired of the ads. We're bombarded with it. But I think that's one of the appeals sometimes of people that do well in social media. The gentleman you're talking with the wine. I mean, that's a great story. And your dad too. That's a great example as well. 75 years old.
Yeah, and he's trying to get into it, and we're just, and I just said, well, let's just do a live video, and we just said, we're just talking about, I'm just sitting here just thinking about things we like to talk about, and it just happens to be old buildings. And I said, and I posted, and I mentioned there's a page called For the Love of Old Houses.
Right.
And I said, just watching For the Love of Old Houses, not promoting me, not promoting anything else. I just was talking. And there was by the time just on the drive home, it was, 70 people, 69 people.
Amazing.
Yeah, I called them up and I said, how many people watched our little video since we made it? And He goes, I said 69. He's like, what? You're kidding me. He says 69 people watch
I think of like 1 or 2, right? Or
yeah,
or 0.
exactly.
But
anyway, I think this is my opinion about people too, and this is what people try to oftentimes say, how do I get the experience to make something? And this is one of my topics I like to talk about. But I believe everybody's different. Okay, whatever it is, everybody has unique life experience. There's not a single person on this earth that has exactly the same life experiences.
Right.
Whether it's education, whether it's going to a football camp or whatever, everybody is unique. And those finding the only why did I come up with like this with Sub-Zero? It's because I had some mechanical background. I used to be an aircraft mechanic on F-16s. I have a degree in chemistry. I took a year of industrial design, which is product design. And I went and bought a food franchise. Now, a chemist wouldn't be thinking about how am I going to make a liquid nitrogen ice cream company, because they're not worried about food. But now you take a chemist that has a food background, and you mail them, they go, oh, well, why don't I do this?
Exactly.
So how many chemists do you know that go into food? Nobody.
Right. Of course.
So those unique experiences is what make people say, well, how do I come up with a good product? Well, you take your experiences.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I love the story. It's just there's a lot of different lessons in there. There's another group I work with called the Collegiate Entrepreneurs, and these are questions that a lot of like young, aspiring entrepreneurs ask. That exact question: how do I come up with a great product? And I think you just answered that question. It's taking all of your different experiences, because everybody is unique, as you were saying. Because of our different experiences, and that's how Sub-Zero came about. So I think it's fascinating. In talking about the franchise, Jerry, I mean, as far as the training goes, it seems like it would be a pretty simple training process. But how does that work? I mean, do they come to headquarters? Once your new franchisees, is that how it works?
Yeah, it is. It's so we just there's two parts. We have them come out, work in the store. We go over some we're trying to beef up our business training. What's one thing I think we've been weak on in the past. We've kind of expected some people have general business, knowledge, how to do QuickBooks, things like that. Now we're trying to focus more on that. We have some basic training that we go through. Construction training. We have somebody that works with them on build out throughout that process. And then we go out, once they're ready to open, then we go out and spend 3 to 5 days in their store, and then just slowly pull back and just observe. When we feel like we're confident they can operate the store, then we walk away. And then we follow up on a regular basis on top of that. So it's you got to train people, but you got to give them the confidence. The only way you can't do that for them. You have to slowly, like, all right, now you're standing on your own 2 feet. I'm here if you got a question. But got to do it yourself.
That's fantastic.
And it's and there's varying levels of success. And a lot of it has to do with location. And there's nothing you can do without a great location. I mean, that's absolutely the first thing that you have to rely on is great location.
Particularly for this type of business, is of course great location.
Ice cream, I used to think people would come to you. What I found is that ice cream is a very impulsive buy, much more than I ever expected. And so I would agree with that. You've got to be in the spot where people are at. We have 3 stores in Provo. Provo's got 100,000 people in it. So the reason we have, and I thought about closing down one of the stores, but what I realized is that we just built the next store, and they're literally a mile apart. And but what I've determined is they're different markets. People are walking down one street, downtown, are different than the people that are over by the campus.
Right.
And determining those different markets is difficult. But anyway, that's the key is you got to be where people are at. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's a great lesson. I think on the importance of location. We've had some shows over the past, of just talking specifically on location. So I think that's great. Where do you see Sub-Zero road, Jerry?
Where do I see it going?
Yeah, I mean, if you look into a crystal ball, where would you like the company to be 3 to 5 years down the road?
I would love to see it 500 stores. I think it has. I don't want to say that I want to match like Cold Stone, because that's with 12 to 1,500 stores, or even Baskin Robbins. Baskin Robbins, will give them some credit. They took them 60 years to get there. To their 5,000 stores, and it's impressive. But that's but more importantly, I think we could easily do 500 stores in the next, say 5 years. But where I want to be is a little bit different than most ice cream shops. And what I mean by that is that I still believe that the companies today, and this is today, they need to have a purpose. Okay, greater than their product. So I've often, and some people say, well, I'm going to give an extra pair of shoes to somebody and that's great. I'm not trying to degrade that.
Right.
But our purpose is to use ice cream to try and encourage some type of experience where some kid might want to take a chemistry class. And that's very simple. It's very simple. It's nothing elaborate or grand. It's but it's to use this, what we've made here, to say is, you can only go to the Exploratorium in San Francisco when you're in San Francisco. But you can go to us and have a little bit of wonderment any time of the week. And so if we can encourage kids or families to at least be interested in something, and I wonder, I just wonder. And that's really my goal. My goal is to create that
spark.
That opportunity.
It almost sounds like right. Yeah. I mean, I think it does that. I can see my son becoming very fascinated. It creates a spark. It's a catalyst for wanting to really learn more. About chemistry.
Yeah,
because,
I had a kid come up, the first couple of years, and he said, I never thought about taking a chemistry class. Didn't even dawn on me. He says, I've decided after coming to your shop that I'm going to take a chemistry class.
Because it's cool. You know what I mean? It's not like, sometimes you think of chemistry, you say, oh, God, it's a tough course that you take in what is it, junior high or,
When I was a kid, we had the chemistry sets. Everybody had chemistry sets.
Right, of course.
If you remember that when you were young. They don't have those anymore because of all the liability and the problems with, the regulations. So you can't.
True.
So we've lost that, for a better term. We've lost that excitement out of.
Yeah.
Because now we anyway, you get my. So this is kind of what I look at as the replacement for the excitement that you got with a chemistry set. I took chemistry because my parents bought me a chemistry set when I was 5 years old. I didn't really play with it. I wanted to learn more about it, so I took a chemistry class, and then I ended up majoring in it. So it was wow. But what I also, one thing I look back and I think is unique, I don't know that I didn't have the confidence to go on and be a world-class chemist.
Right.
But I remember my chemistry teacher in high school, and I went and asked her, I said, do you think I can hack this? Because this is a hard class, isn't it? And she says, I wouldn't take this class. You're not going to you can't hack it.
Right.
And I was like, are you kidding me? You calling me an idiot? And so I was like,
right,
exactly. bound and determined to take her class, which I did, and then I finally, and then I eventually graduated with it. But along with that, I drug 3 of my other friends all the way through to graduation, and they actually went on and got PhDs. But they,
wow.
So they, now I've never seen that teacher since, and she has no idea that her challenge made that impact. But
wow,
sometimes you just got to be challenged.
Of course.
Say, you can't do it. You might as well quit.
Right. That's fantastic. I think it's a great story. What's the best way for our listeners, Jerry, to get more information, on the product and of course the franchise specifically? Any websites that you'd like them to go to?
There's our website, subzeroicecream.com.
Okay.
And then Franchise Chatter has some articles. There's the ink. Anyway, if you go to our Facebook page too, Facebook.com/subzeroicecream.com or Sub-Zero Ice Cream has a bunch of articles too, and I'd probably read a lot of the articles, especially some of the franchisees' experiences as they've written about it in the press.
Of course, right.
And get their take.
That's fantastic. I want to thank you for coming on the show again, Jerry. I could talk to you for another hour about this topic. I think it's fantastic, and again, I love your product, and it was just an honor for me to get the chance to finally speak with you today.
Well, thanks for having me, and I really love these events, so I really appreciate you having me on.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, Jerry. And we'll be right back with more franchise interviews.
The Stone Coat Franchise Opportunity. Are you looking for a unique and lucrative franchise opportunity? If so, take a look at Stone Coat. With a patented process which creates a true stone finish on almost any wall or ceiling, Stone Coat is a true game-changing product in the multi-billion-dollar construction industry. Stone Coat is applied faster, cleaner, and cheaper than conventional quarried stone, which saves both time and money. With advantages in remodel and new construction of both residential and commercial projects, Stone Coat is a true crossover product. The Stone Coat franchise opportunity provides a low startup cost, low operating expenses, comprehensive training, ongoing support, and no royalty payments. For more information on the Stone Coat franchise opportunity, go to www.stonecoatfranchise.com. That's www.stonecoatfranchise.com, or call us at 972-380-2700. That's 972-380-2700. Franchise interviews. From Easton, Pennsylvania to Sydney, Australia, you're listening to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews.
Hi everyone, this is Marty McDermott from Franchise Interviews, and welcome to another edition of Great Quotes in Franchising, where each podcast you get to hear a great quote in franchising. We've been hosting franchise interviews now over 8 years and over 400 shows, and during that time we've had some incredible quotes on our show. Today you're going to get to hear from Chris Simic, who is the founder of FranchiseTeacher.com, and Chris has over 30 years of business and franchise experience as an independent business owner, a franchisee, and a franchisor. And Chris said something very profound that we haven't heard on our show in over 8 years. He mentioned that you have to almost work harder to fail at franchising than to succeed in franchising, and he explains why.
Most people, about 90% I think I've seen, buy a business other than they first looked at.
Wow, that's amazing.
So
it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, that's a big number too, isn't it, Chris? Most people, they go in with these certain expectations and they come out with something different, and I find that fascinating.
I absolutely, it never ceases to astound me, but I think that speaks to the value of franchising as a business model and a business method, because people don't have to be in something just because they know it. And quite candidly, sometimes getting involved in a business that you would rather do that you were not involved in allows you the luxury of taking a new career path and to develop something you never would have had the opportunity to had it not been, systematized and prioritized for you. In franchising, it's said that you have to really almost work harder to fail than to succeed, because if you have a good franchise system, if you follow directions, you have to almost purposely not follow them to not do well.
That's true. That's fantastic. We have this great quote in franchising. I think we're going to put that one in there, Chris. I think that's very original, and it's very true. What advice would you give to our listeners? We find that most of them, they're just beginning their search to buy a franchise, Chris, and we find that, most of them just simply, they don't even know where to begin, like you were saying. What advice would you give to them?
I do, when I speak to people looking at franchise, I give them three different pieces of advice. One, make sure you're looking for a business for the right reason. Now, a lot of people have things happen in their life. They lose a job or something happens, and they react and maybe say, well, okay, maybe I'll go buy a business. That may not be the reason to do it versus having the luxury of selectivity that here's my opportunity that was created by some adversity. Second thing is that they have to make sure that they are able to be franchisees, that not everybody is designed to be able to follow the systems, procedures, and the processes it takes to be a successful franchise owner. And then I tell them quite candidly is pick a couple of the industries and the price ranges that may have interest to you, and then kind of pin down from there, either using the resources of a consultant or a broker or a team member, or on their own. Either way, but I think that if they take their time, follow the steps, and do it for the right reasons, they'll be on a much smoother pathway to success in owning their own business.
That's well said. What's in the future then for Franchise Teacher, Chris? I mean, where do you see the company 3 to 5 years down the road?
Well, Marty, we've been extremely fortunate and blessed that the business has been around, through Century Franchise Group for many years. And our new FranchiseTeacher.com has taken off. We're representing right now, 7 plus brands. I think in 5 years our focus will really be even more fine-tuned as the consumer or the prospective business owner is looking for more and more specific information. Breaking down to teach, coach, consult, and advise, I think will be a way for us to assist people in what they need. People again don't know what they don't know, but I think the information overload sometimes discourages people too early. They say, this is too much for me to process. If we can break it down into bite-sized pieces, I think more and more people, especially the younger generation, who are looking for the advice and the information they want when they want it, I think is going to do nothing more than continue. Then our next business venture, which launches at the end of this year, is looking to capture all the different franchise brands around the world and put them into one place. So we're looking forward to a future. And franchising is going nowhere but growing. As you been around a long time too, the number of franchise opportunities, and the world's getting to be a smaller place. I think you're going to find a lot of opportunities coming in and going out of different marketplaces in different countries, accessible to more people.
That's fantastic. What's the best way, Chris, for our listeners to get more information on FranchiseTeacher.com? Obviously, FranchiseTeacher.com, but any numbers you'd like them to call or email addresses?
Well, actually, we appreciate www.franchiseteacher.com. And my business partner, Dave, and I offer them the free 1-hour consultation. Fill out the form and take advantage of it.
That's fantastic. I want to thank you again, Chris, for finally coming on the show. I've been following your career for a long time now, and I have just been very impressed with everything that you've done, So when I saw this, I mentioned to you, we don't typically call people to come on the show, but I had to have you specifically on the show. So it was an honor and a privilege to have you on the show today.
Marty, ditto, and again, congratulations on your PhD doctorate. I have read your thesis, and I would recommend it reading if people can get through the information.
I really appreciate that you read it, too, because that's an honor coming from you, so that's fantastic. Well, I want to thank you again, Chris.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with more franchise interviews.